Greetings and welcome to a 2-for-1 episode. So first, welcome to the NewPreneur Club. NewPreneur is where we take about 10 minutes or so and talk through some of the finer aspects of starting your own business and what that entails, and some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that might be helpful to you. So let's get started. So let's say you want to start a new business, and let's say especially if business involves sharing what you know or what you've created. A lot of times the best thing to do is to market that, right? You can't just rely on word of mouth to make sure that people are going to know what you are are saying, right, or doing. So it's important that you put this somewhere that makes a lot of sense. Well, in today's world, we have more possibilities than we ever have before. And so we have the capability of putting our business online in a multitude of different places. Now, there's a good and bad to this. So the good is just that it's very possible. The barriers to entry are way lower than they ever have been. There's always things we need to be covering when it comes to business. And we'll talk about a lot of those finer points of like finance and things like that that we need to consider in future episodes. But today, I want to talk about having an online platform. So when we say having an online platform, that means some place where you live virtually online. Now, the concept of a website has been almost as old as the World Wide Web itself. The World Wide Web itself was, well, I don't want to get into the full history there. I am kind of a geek in that regards, and so I have an unusual background as far as the true history of the internet. And I've never met Al Gore. I didn't know that he invented it until later. I'm joking. That's a joke, but the reality is that you still need some sort of a presence, a website, for example. Now, in these days, the most prevalent website tool to use is WordPress. Most people do that, whether you have a blog or have information to share or just even products to share. WordPress has become the kind of de facto standard. And so that is something that I recommend starting with, mostly because there's such a wealth of information about there on getting started with it and using it. And also there's a lot of people that can help you along the way. And so that's why I recommend having that. Now, you might say to yourself, why not just put my business up on Facebook? Why not just put my stuff up there and or maybe I'll just be on YouTube like you? Well, there's some reasons why this is really important, and we're going to cover those in the SquirrelPrenuer stories coming up here. But the big thing that I need you to know is that your platform needs to be where you live online. Yes, but it also needs to be the place you control. Now, it's a lot like living out of a hotel room. It's fine for a while. It's easy, right? You show up, you pay some money, and you have a place to sleep. But as far as living your life there, not many of us would want to live our lives out of a hotel room, at least not the same one. I have actually in my life spent a lot of time on the road. And so, in fact, speaking of hotel rooms, I can tell you that not only have I spent a lot of time in hotel rooms, but I've kind of got the proof, had the proof that I stay in way too many hotel rooms. Had that close by here, but it seems to have eluded me. But hotel rooms are not a place that you want to live, even though I spent a lot of time in them. Really wasn't where I felt like I should be. It's not ideal. You're always moving around. You're never really in the same room all the time, that sort of thing. It's just like nothing about it really says stability or that you want to live your life there. Well, when you have a presence online and your online presence consists of living in someone else's house or living in someone else's space, then you are basically like that. You're living in a hotel room instead of a house. You need to have your own site. And it doesn't matter how big it is, and it doesn't matter how complicated it is. If you're serious about running a business online in any kind of anything from making $5 a month to 5 million a month, it doesn't matter. You need to have control over your own platform. There's a lot of reasons for this, aside from what I've mentioned. One is that you're not in control of when your content appears in front of other people. That's something that's really important. That's a key element here. Another thing is, as we're learning in recent years, you may not even be able to put your content out there in such a way that you want to. You may not be able to be upfront about your sales process, or you may not be able to serve people as deeply as you want to. You don't have the flexibility of choosing how things look. There's any number of reasons why you don't want to be starting your online presence, strictly elsewhere and not going to your own platform. Now, there's some irony in this, and this is what we're going to talk about in the next 2 weeks, is actually the fact that I'm actually trying a little bit of an experiment, and that experiment is proving out very well that, just going with a new thing just on the internet with no central hub is actually proving a little bit disastrous for me. The efforts that I'm putting in here, fortunately, are very minimal, but at the same time, there's no way for me to amplify my presence here without spending money on these platforms. And if I don't advertise that I'm going live with you, you may not know about it. So if you're not like friends with me or following me, then you won't know about that. And so when it comes to running a business, this is something you have to think about. It's like, okay, if my business depends on people seeing what I have and being in a relationship with me, for example, then am I okay with them maybe seeing it? Well, your answer should be no. You should never be okay with them maybe seeing what you do. You should always be passionate about making sure that people do see what you do. Now, you always want to make sure you're reaching the right people, which is why we talk about the concept of marketing, which we'll get to in a second. But the reality is that you need a platform. You need something that is yours and that you can control what's there and how it looks. And the other important thing about having your own platform is that you now have the opportunity to get information from people so that you can interact with them on a deeper basis. So that means things like offering to collect an email address so that you can email them on a newsletter or whatever. There's even some more modern methods that are just simply not possible with things like Facebook, where you can't really act outside of the platform. So this is an important thing. So you always want to have that. Now, marketing is something that we're going to talk about for a lot of the next part of our conversation. But what I'll say about this is that marketing is something that should be done from embassies in. And when I say embassies, I mean like Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. All these different places are uh, basically you're represented there, but you don't live there. And so that's why Michael Hyatt calls these embassies in his book Platform, which is fantastic resource, by the way. Absolutely should check that out. It's the kind of the definitive work on all these kind of things. But you don't want to market yourself completely on embassies. You want to make sure that you're always pointing back to your platform. So whatever embassy you're reaching out to, like for example, right now I'm broadcasting this on 4 different places. I actually decided to reach out to Twitch today just to have some fun with it and use my Thrive IT channel. So I figure there's probably some people on Twitch that need to know this kind of thing as well, because if you're just relying on Twitch, for example, for your entire platform, let's say they change their mind about the way things should be. This happened this last year. There was a lot of people that had certain ways that they ran their broadcasts, and Twitch decided that they wanted to change how that worked. And so they found themselves suddenly without the ability to reach their audience because they had either violated terms or a variety of different things. So if they didn't have their own platform, their own alternate methods of reaching people, or just a way to just use that as a sort of like what I do of saying, I'm going to broadcast to these multiple places, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. to let people know about me and to start that conversation and to introduce myself. But ultimately, I want you to come to my platform. I want you to visit my house. I want you to be in relationship with me. And so that's why those are called embassies. And that's what we're going to talk about next time on NewPreneur Club. I'm talking about various embassies and ways you can run those. But you always want to pop back to a platform. So my challenge to you is to think about having your own website, your own platform, instead of relying on other places. All right. So that was the NewPreneur. Since I missed yesterday, it's made up. I can chop this recording up and put that up into the other section there. I'm gonna have to do some additional editing because I didn't go under my 10 minutes. Bad DJ, no biscuit. That's what happens when you're unscripted, folks, is sometimes it's like that. But for SquirrelPrenuer, which is usually what we do on Tuesdays here, I wanted to talk to you a bit about this concept of platform and specifically marketing of a platform, but there's some additional things in the platform that caused a distraction for me that caused me to lose sight of some important things about my business. And so let's go with that. Yes, sorry about that. So I have many domains. You might say I have a domain addiction. I have so many that I don't even know how many I have. Every time I get an idea at like 3 a.m, and I think it sounds like a great thing, I'll wake up the next day and there's a receipt for a domain I've purchased. Some people like do this with like Amazon purchases. I do it with domain names. All right. It's a problem. And the thing is, a lot of times I'll get obsessed with an idea and I will squirrel and I will get to looking at that idea as the next big thing. And that's what I should be doing. Sometimes I'll even do that to support my own platform. And I'll think about, a different branding to do. Pardon me. Actually, there's good and bad to this. This last year, we launched the royal we. I launched a company that I was calling Thrive IT. It's actually not a company technically; it's actually a brand. So it's actually part of Eshelman Enterprises, and then part of the publishing goes to my other company, 11 Talents LLC. So you can see where this is going, right? There's a lot of different places where things can land. Well, the problem was, and the reason I started this effort was that I had too many platforms. I had, I think, and still am operating 4 primary domains and a total of 7 different platforms for those domains, which means that anytime people want to interact with me, not only do they not necessarily know where to go, when they do so, I have a whole new set of challenges for them. And it's a whole new set of challenges to keep track of them. And so when it came to having just something as simple as WordPress, yeah, sure. But I have something like 10 different instances of WordPress out there. Fortunately, I found some tools to help manage these more easily. And so I'm not constantly going into each one and updating and all that kind of stuff. That's a thing of the past. But there's things that are deeper than that when it comes to like look and feel of these websites, deciding how each one should look and, all these kind of things. They seem small. And this is one of the things that if you feel that squirrel urge, I need you to hear me, that small things become big things when they stack up. We tend to think of these, they're like tiny little pebbles on the beach when they're actually fairly big rocks, and will make it hard to walk in a pretty rapid basis if we allow them to stack up and get really hard to move around. And if I can make this metaphor any deeper, I'm going to attempt to. But the reality is that having too many things is a bit of a problem. And here's the demonstration of this. Right now, I actually don't have a platform for what I'm doing. My WordPress site is operating. It's up right now. You can go to djeshelman.com right now and you'll see my website. Problem is, I haven't been able to make any changes to that website for several months now. And so there's an expired timer at the top of that when it was time to launch my last book. and there's some things about it, but I've been wanting to make some changes to it. I can't because something is broken with it, and I have no time to deal with it because I have all these other things that I'm managing. So when it comes to managing a platform, the the notion here is to pick a place and make that a good place where you live. Now you might have some other reasons to do other sites that are pointer sites, but there's a difference between a pointer site and a platform. Just like there's embassies and platforms, you might have sites you have to conduct a specific function. For example, I have sites that I point a domain name to that I don't own those, but I rent space there for community, for courses, things like that. So I use like Mighty Networks, for example, for my community sites. So I actually point my domain name there. They take care of the rest. I pay them a monthly fee. That's the way that works. Same thing with um, my platform for courses, for example. Actually, that's another problem. I have a few different platforms for courses at this point. It's becoming, it becomes a real challenge when you find midway through that something's not meeting your needs, but you're already kind of committed because you have, people buying from you and you have products there. Trust me, it's a real hassle. But I have another primary course platform that I'm building everything towards, that is a different site called New Zenler. It's a beta. It's a new thing coming up. Very cool. I was going to tell you to check it out. You should still can, but I think the price just went up to being part of that. But good stuff. The thing is, you always want a place to go to that you can be so involved with that you don't have the kind of problems that I have. In other words, if I had been blogging all the time, if I'd been involved in interacting with people on that platform all the time, I would have already known about this problem months ago and have a really good reason to solve it. Right now, I don't have a really good reason to solve it, and so I will, probably within the week, I'm guessing, mostly because, here I am talking about platforms, and it's very embarrassing that if you went to my platform, you wouldn't know anything about what I'm doing right now. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's the pain is real, and that's why I'm being real with you, is that all the work that I'm doing right now, fortunately, if you want to call it fortunately, doing this live, there's nobody with me live right now because I had no real way to get my message out that I was going live. All I could do was announce on the platforms, the other people's platforms, the embassies that I'm part of, and hope people knew about it. And I've played around with variations of this, like Facebook Live, for example. I find that very rarely do I have some capability of being consistently live at the same time. And even then, people still won't show up until usually I'm live for about 30 minutes. And then they'll start to trickle in, realize they have no idea what I'm talking about, and leave. That's the experience so far with Facebook Live. Similar with YouTube Live. But what I will say is that this is an easy way for me to just get the content out there, which is great. The problem is I don't have anything for you to do. I don't have a call to action that I can tell you. I can't tell you to go sign up for an email list because it doesn't really exist yet. I can't tell you to go to an article because it doesn't exist yet. And so there's just certain things that you probably noticed about the world that are important. Now, I will say that for my other work that I do in the technology world, we do have a platform there. We do have places you can interact and view blog posts and learn more about me and what I do. And you can buy the books and buy the courses and things like that. Yes. And so we use, in those cases, things like YouTube and Facebook and Twitch and all these other places we broadcast to encourage people to take that action, which is great. Mostly because that's not the only cost is effort at that point, but we're asking people to make a jump. We're asking people to say, okay, this platform you're on is great. What we want to have you do now is exit this platform and come back to our house. It's a lot like if you were at a party and someone said, so I know you're having fun and this is great and all, but I'm going to go back to my place and we're going to have a party there. You want to come? That's what that kind of looks like sometimes. And so it works part of the time, but not anywhere near as often as we think. But if your attitude is that I'm going to somebody else's party, not to invite someone back to me, that's not my primary purpose for being there, but to serve while I'm there, that's a little bit different. And so, like, for example, what I'm doing right now is I'm taking a half hour out of my day that I could be doing any number of different things, but I'm saying, you know what? I would like to teach you something. I would like to open up the conversation. And if there's more to be had, great. If not, I'll be back next week. I will be back here because this is something that I'm passionate about serving in. And so I know right now it's right now it's just pure service, right? There's nowhere to go. There's nothing I can tell you to go do. It just doesn't exist yet. And so there wouldn't be much point. I might go back after the fact and update like the description underneath. But right now, yeah, there's no actions to take right now. Because I have squirreled so hard that I've got so many things out there that just managing them has become a challenge. And so I also promised to talk a little bit about marketing, and I want to do that. So marketing is also something where I highly recommend not taking the pathway that I did and trying to learn marketing. Learn about marketing, get the concepts of marketing, but trying to actually do marketing, big mistake. When it comes to actually doing marketing, I recommend getting someone else to do it for you. Get them involved in that process, which is exactly what I'm finally, after like almost 4 years of doing this, I'm finally getting some other people involved. Does it cost money? Yes. But here's the thing, and this is really important when it comes to this, is that in order to get noticed on your platform, you're always going to have to rely on some embassy out there. You're always going to have to rely on search engine optimization, which is one of the things that people talk about all the time, and it's something that changes the way it's done all the time as well, by the way. So that as a focus is kind of spurious. It's not going to work for you the way you think it is all the time. There's also just referrals and things like that. So you can have people talking about you on social media, hoping it goes at least a little bit viral, hoping it, at least 2 people share it. I mean, for me, if one person shares what I'm doing, I'm pretty excited about it. I really am. If 2 people share what I'm doing, or if there's a chain of more than one share, I usually have to get a seat under me because I can't believe it's actually happened. This is just part of the way this works with right now. But the reality is shortcuts save you not only time, but can actually make you money instead of just costing you money. So yeah, you're investing in marketing. So, whether it's spending on advertisements or pay to play kind of things, where you're part of something else, or you're making the investment of time in showing up and speaking at events or things like that, or even things like this, can be considered marketing in that regards. But the reality is what you're trying to do is cut the time it takes to reach someone. And so these are kind of like little shortcuts. Well, trying to do that on your own and do all the other things about your business usually can cause you to start to squirrel more than you think, because there are so many people out there with so many brilliant strategies. And in order to sell those strategies, usually they have to say something to you. And it goes a little something like this: you can do it. We believe in you. You can do this. You should do this. You must do this. It's one of those things where it drives me crazy because it's like, no, focus on your content, focus on what you do, focus on what you are serving with. Now, if what you're serving with is doing marketing for other people, yeah, do that. But hopefully that is understood, that if you kind of, I don't like the phrase stay within your lane. Um, I like switching lanes a lot. You can't tell. So I don't necessarily like that, but that's been the reality of my business. And that's one of the reasons why the growth potential has not been the growth I've actually seen. And so this is why in this year, one of the things that I'm doing much more proactively at this point is bringing other people in, having them very well understand the vision and what I'm trying to do, and understand the people that I want to reach and why, and letting them take responsibility for finding them instead of it all being on me. Because if it's all on my shoulders, then I tend to always want to find the most effective strategy. And I always want to find what works for me, and all these different things that take away so much of my time that I end up not actually creating anything new. I end up not serving very well the people that I want to serve. So ultimately, exercise in futility. So when it comes to marketing, my primary recommendation is to find ways to get other people involved in that process. Now, for some, that might mean doing some legwork. It might mean asking people to share what you do. Now, I could say right now, I'd love for you to share this video with someone today. And if it's impacted you, I absolutely invite you to share. That's legwork. That's a bit of like just asking people to do something on your behalf. It's free. The thing is, it doesn't cost a lot for the other person either. It costs a little bit of time, and it's so easy to share something. You just literally click a button, usually at the bottom of the video or wherever you're viewing this today. It's easy to share, right? You can do that. You can do it. I believe in you. You can do this. You must do this. That's legwork. So honestly, when it comes to avoiding, that squirrel thing where you're just going to chase after efforts that don't necessarily lead to results that you want, marketing is definitely one of those areas that can happen. But also, like I said, so you have platforms and marketing, these two areas. If you are spending too much effort trying to broaden those and have various different places where people can find you, um, yeah, it don't always work. So that's what I wanted to close with today is kind of letting you see a little bit about why this didn't work for me. So my biggest problem is identity. One of my biggest frustrations in life is when I try to explain what I do. I freeze up. I'm like, oh, well, I do so many things because I do. It's just a part of who I am, and so trying to get that down, I try to do that in such a way that is going to cause the least amount of questions. And the reality is, I should be doing it in such a way that causes more questions, not less. But it's not always what I want to talk about. I want to get to talking about them. I don't want to talk about myself. That's my nature. And so I will do that. I also have a last name that for some reason people will misspell. And so when it comes to directing people to djeshelman.com, that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. It's like, okay, great. How do you spell that? Or it's something that's just not as fluid to say in other embassies without having a link for them to click on. And so it's a challenge. And so I set about trying to find easy to use domains or easy to remember domains, and to point either back to my djeshelman.com or to point to other domain names that accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. Now, sometimes this is appropriate. For example, I used to have all of my tech content and my blog and other stuff all on djeshelman.com. The problem there is that people don't really know what your site is about, and they don't know what to expect. So if I was, selling pencils and had a blog and was trying to talk about guitars and was talking about technology and was trying to sell my books, all on the same site, that'd be kind of confusing, wouldn't it? It's not exactly something that would be great. So there is a level where having separate brands does make some sense. But what I'll say is that eventually I ended up with, um, let's see, I'm trying to think of how many domains I have with the word or a phrase around Citrix in it. Um, I want to say somewhere around the area of 12 to 15. Most of which never saw the light of day to actually do anything. Some of which don't even point anywhere today. You know, they're just ones that they get renewed because I forgot, and that's about the end of it. But really, when it comes down to it, I really could have got away with just the one. But I felt this need to have different places people could go to find what I was offering. And I was so afraid of them getting confused about where they were that there's all these different places. Well, the problem is people got confused about where they were. And I started getting questions of DJ, is this your site? Okay, yeah. So that's been lost. Now, in some cases, though, I didn't want to be the face of the website. You know, I wanted to be able to leave that. It didn't feel like my identity was caught up in that. And so that's something to be clear about too. But the problem becomes if you have just too many different places, then it really becomes too much of a challenge. And so one of the things that I'm in the process of wanting to do is consolidation. You know, so whether it's my my podcast, which currently has a different site, whether it's my 11 Talents network, which has a different site, whether it is my personal site at djashelman.com, um, all these different things are all going to be consolidated. Now, I haven't chosen where I'm going to consolidate everything yet. I'll be honest with you. Um, it might be one of those things where I choose, say, 11 Talents, for example, as the place that I put everything. And so whenever you go to djashelman.com, it would go to my blog on that domain. It would just point there. You know, that's or redirect there, one of the two. So these are things you can do, but it's this the kind of putting the drawing a line in the sand of saying, you know what, maintaining too many of these different sites and identities is a lot like having multiple personality disorder. People are going to ask you who you are, and you're going to have to come up with a creative answer every single time. It's exhausting. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. So the honest truth is we need to have platforms that make sense, that are something we're going to be returning to daily. It's got to be where we live, not just that place we go to, not that shed in the backyard that we visit, you know, once or twice a month, you know, or even less than that sometimes. It's got to be the place you care about. So that is there's so many reasons why too. I mean, there's some background mechanics I don't want to go too much into, but there's some things as far as the marketing side of things that makes sense as well. So it turns out, say for example, on Google, um, the the notion used to be that, you know, having people go to a bunch of different sites and linking links back and forth was a good thing. Well, it turns out that's not always the best thing. It turns out that having people live on your website and staying in a session on your website longer is actually better. Who knew, right? I still not sure I know all the mechanics of that. I probably even shouldn't have even said anything because I'm probably wrong. Probably someone's gonna, you know, jump in the comments and just be all triggered and like, you're so wrong about the way Google works. Brr! Please do. I could use some advice right now. But honestly, the thing I'm trying to get across is in terms of what's going to work for you, don't be so worried about the way your audience is going to see you that you make the mistake I made and try to do a bunch of different things for a bunch of different people and have a bunch of different identities out there. Just be you. Now, if you have a company that has to be a company and can't be you, great. Just don't get it confused and think you have to have 15 for the company and another 10 for yourself. It's not sustainable. Trust me, I know. So that's just, I could go on for forever about this, but I think I have pretty much beaten that horse senseless. Let's talk just a little bit more about the marketing element of this too. Um, one of the things that I made the mistake of is trying to cast a wide net. And it was expensive to do this because whether they say so or not, places like Facebook and Google, they make their money from advertising, right? They don't charge the people for participation in the platform. They charge people for advertising on their platform. That's how they make their money. Well, do you think it's really in their best interest to make sure that you always have exactly the right exposure to the right people every single time? Not exactly. They do make it possible, but making it easy, not so much. That's not a reality. So you have to do a lot of legwork, as far as getting that in front of the right people and honing that message in, takes a lot of work. And that is one of those reasons why sometimes you do need more than one platform, is because of some of the tools that are involved with that. But ultimately, when it comes to things like advertising, usually having a succinct strategy that isn't overly complicated is exactly what you need. It's easier to keep track of. It's easier to let other people into the process, and generally speaking, it's easier to know precisely what's going on and not spend a lot of money like I did on getting pretty much no results. I'm always kind of bitter about advertising at this point because I did it so badly for so long that it just ended up, I might as well just, walked up and handed them the money and just ran the other direction, with my hair on fire, as that's pretty much what it was like. But in the right hands of the right person, that's a lot different. And so that's where I want to say again, when it comes to marketing, don't try and learn all the strategies for yourself and how to do them. Just learn the basics of the direction you want to go with it, and get the right people involved to take on all the mechanics of that, because this stuff changes all the time. Um, it's probably changed twice since we've been broadcasting here. So these are my encouragements to you. Yeah. So we will see you next week. Next week, we're going to talk about embassies, and I'm going to talk about, uh, wow, how to squirrel out on embassies and really shoot yourself in the foot. And then I'll going to also share a story about how that went really badly. I'm also going to share a story about how that went really, really, really well. And so you'll have that next week for the SquirrelPreneur stories. So I will see you then, or just join me tomorrow for the 11 talent. Sorry, let's mess that up. Join me Thursday for 11 talents. It's a special time, 9 a.m. Central Time, I believe. Wow, I should have looked at that again before I promised that. I'm sorry. But we have a different broadcast that's happening our normal time on Wednesdays, and so I've had to move to Thursday. And then Friday, I'm not sure what we're doing yet. So we're gonna find out. But I'd love your feedback. I'd love for your comments. Also love to know if there are times of day that work better for you for these kind of broadcasts, so you can join me live and don't have to watch a replay. Let me know. And then we are going to be working, like I said, on our own platform where we can actually send out reminders to you directly instead of relying on these various embassies to do that for us. And so we are working on that, my assistant and I. Sometime in the next few weeks is what I'm hoping for. But there's a lot of projects going on right now that are kind of stealing away a lot of our focus. And so this might end up being just me serving for a while longer and not worrying about where people are going to land. So hey, if I see you next week, I'll see you next week. Have a great day, and in what you're doing out there, make sure that focus stays on leaving it better than you found it.